Sure, she's still impulsive, alive, but she's also stubborn and sulky. Apple didn't fall far from the tree, let me tell you.
Right.
Hello, this is Demon Phoenix with another part of my Witcher 3 New Game Plus walkthrough, and this is taking us through Deathmatch. Now, as you can see here, I'm just going to show a little bit of the thing that you can do in some of the Novigrad missions, and some of them are extremely interesting. So one of the things you can do is that, because we have Euphoria and it makes your damage so outrageous, is you can skip some of the quite annoying parts that are otherwise quite difficult, where we can't just rely on the build to carry us through things, like this little sword duel with Rosa Van Atra as part of the Broken Flowers quest. Now, usually it's a good little test of skill, and you have to be working on your parries and dodge her attacks, and she does tons of damage with her little wooden sword. But this time we've got Rend and Euphoria, and so we can just knock off all of her health at once, which is quite funny. As I mentioned at the end of the last episode, I've actually been using the Scoia'tael deck for a bit of a challenging Gwent, and Scoia'tael is arguably the weakest deck, but it is also quite a fun deck when you get a lot of the things in it. So if you wanted to, you could hold off from playing Gwent until you've got either the Scoia'tael or the monster deck or something like that. You've been to Skellige and got the monster cards. I've done that on a previous New Game Plus playthrough and on a regular game playthrough, just to add a bit of variety to Gwent if you're a Gwent fanatic like I am. Part of the thing that you need to do is matter of life and death. So if you progress the quests with Dijkstra and Triss far enough so that you can do a matter of life and death, you must make sure that if you want the collect 'em all achievement or you want the Milva card, you do these side tournaments, and it also has the Dandelion card. Milva card is incredible because it's not a hero, but it is a 10 strength range card with morale, so it adds +1 to all of your ranged cards, and because it's not a hero, it can be replayed with the numerous medics that the Scoia'tael deck have. It is one of my favourite Gwent cards. In the first part of the the walkthrough that's not for New Game Plus, you may remember that we used signs in this bit where you're fighting the thugs in the maze as part of Matter and Life and Death, and this time it'll be more difficult to burn even with Euphoria and the really high sign intensity, but Ard is very useful for getting some hits in. This is one of the parts of the game where you don't have the build with the Ursine gear, so you do take a lot more damage. One of the other parts that's very difficult is the scene with Dijkstra, where you get attacked in the bathhouse and you have no armour whatsoever, and I actually did die at that part because I was being careless, and when you're wearing just a towel and have no armour, the bludgeoning attacks will do a ton of damage. So when you're doing that bit in the bathhouse, make sure that you have the Arakas decoction, but more importantly that you just use the Quen and dodge a lot to make sure that you always have Quen up and you're never in danger of taking a hit. And if you can use the sign usage, then that's extremely useful. One of the other things we covered in earlier parts of the walkthrough, and I've been making great use of in this playthrough and really enjoying, is when you've got the build pretty much finished, about level 75, so maybe towards the end of Novigrad or as you're getting to the Skellige sort of portions, depending on how high a level you were when you started New Game Plus, you'll start to get a lot of extra ability points, and you'll have already finished the build and you'll have a few to play with. Now, getting Ard Sweep for those extra 9 points allows you to use it with the Ancient Lesson decoction, and the only drawback is that the trade-off is that you can use Ard Sweep and Ancient Lesson decoction to get really high stamina regeneration, but you don't have the extra points to be able to use Thunderbolt. So just bear that in mind if you're using the Ard Sweep version. Now, this is the Doppler quest, and I really do not like killing the Doppler in this quest, like at all. I would never do it on a normal playthrough. But you have to bear in mind that if you want all of the decoctions and you're a bit of a completionist like I do, then in one of your 2 playthroughs you will have to have killed the Doppler to get the Doppler decoction, because that is the only place that you can get the Doppler mutagen in the game. You can't even get it from the extra contract in Skellige, the one where you can end up fighting a Doppler at the end of that. As far as I'm aware, he will never drop the Doppler mutagen. So if you want that mutagen for the Doppler decoction, then unfortunately you're going to have to kill that Doppler there, which kind of sucks, but what can you do? Some of the other subquests you can do, not particularly difficult ones, but just as a point of interest, is when you're doing the quest here where you have to fight a fire elemental, when you are commissioned by Radovid to search for Philippa Eilhart. You can use Ard to put out the flames of a fire elemental, and this counts for any of the ones that you fight, although they are quite rare in the game. But just an interesting tip, particularly easy if you're using the hard sweet version of the build. Again, I know I do keep coming back to it, but I've been enjoying this part of the playthrough, and it's something a little different from the normal version of the Uber build. So you can see there that with this, with the Manticore boots, you'll have 300 toxicity once you've found a couple of the story-based recipes in the game. And so you can still use the 20-point potions on top of your 4 decoctions, but because you don't have 25 spare points after using the 4 decoctions, you will not be able to use Thunderbolt on top of it unless you're using the Manticore pants, which is an option. You don't lose much in terms of slashing. You do lose a little bit of slashing resistance, but you lose a lot of piercing and bludgeoning resistance, so you'd either have to switch back to the Unvic trousers versus human enemies, or be careful there. At the end of the Novigrad storylines, for Dandelion storylines, you have to play as Ciri, and this is one of the parts of the game that reminds you that actually Deathmatch is supposed to be difficult, even though it isn't with our build on New Game Plus when playing as Geralt. Now, you don't have potions or any of that stuff, and although Ciri's health regenerates slowly over time, the enemies can do a fair amount of damage to you. So, not particularly on these parts of it, but you just have to dodge a lot. But particularly on this breakneck speed Ciri story quest, where you have to run through Novigrad. Now, there are a lot of enemies that you can fight here, but I can never be bothered actually fighting them. So what I do is I just use B or A, both of which, instead of doing Geralt's dodge or roll, will just do Ciri's blink, where she teleports. And you can just mash that and go straight through all of the enemies here. So I'm going to be showing that in just a moment. As you'll see, video pauses here for just a little bit, but you'll see it in a minute. This is just me using blink and skipping through all of this bit here. This bit of the mission at the end of breakneck speed, you have to fight a lot of enemies at once, and again, it's another reminder that deathmatch is actually supposed to be difficult, so just be very careful because you don't have anything like the Aracast decoction or your gear to be able to save you when playing as Ciri, but she is a little bit different, obviously, and you just keep using blink and dodging a lot. Be very careful of the enemies with clubs because it seems that they still do massive damage, like you can see there. And just take an absolute ton of damage with Ciri when you get hit by them. Like I say, her health does regenerate slowly, so you can just stay away from the enemies and gradually recover your health and just keep dodging. Now, it is pretty boring, but once you get past this bit, you're okay and you can go back to playing as Geralt. So once we've completed this part of the quest, and we have the cutscene here where Ciri teleports back to Skellige, I believe, for the part where she goes to, spoilers, the Isle of Mist. But if you're watching a New Game Plus walkthrough, I would expect you to know that already, so hey ho. But after she has done this part of the quest, that's it for most of the Novigrad missions. So you've got the normal contracts and everything else to finish off there, but none of those are particularly difficult. And in my playthrough I had the Scoia'tael deck, so I can just do Gwent a little bit differently as well. So after you've completed this bit, there's 2 choices, one of which is perfectly normal and one of which is not so normal. You can either go back to Skellige and complete all of the Skellige missions, which we'll be doing obviously in later parts of the walkthrough, but one of the things you can do is after you've completed these parts of the storylines and finished off Dandelion's quests, so he is back at the Rosemary in Time, or the Chameleon as it gets renamed, you actually have the option to go to Toussaint instead. And this is normally something that you wouldn't really consider, but if you've seen my going to Toussaint early video, you can know you can do this in the regular game, as well as you can do it in New Game Plus. So that is something that we're going to take advantage of. And that's particularly useful when going to Toussaint. If you're wanting to use the Scoia'tael deck, you can also do the Dangerous Game mission, which you start from Zoltan, and you get the Isengrim Foil Tana, which is a fantastic card. It's a hero and it also has morale, so in one of your rounds you can use that, and it's really good, especially with the muster cards if you have any of those in your deck, like the Havakar Smugglers, which are really useful. So after you've done Poet Under Pressure and Dandelion and Priscilla head back to Novigrad, we will in fact be making a slight detour and going to Toussaint and starting Envoys and Wine Boys to be able to get a couple of useful things there. So that's going to be the next part of the episode. Thank you for watching, and please like and subscribe for more videos.